Hi there YouTube, I'm back with another little bonus video. I came across a box of miniatures that I painted way back, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 years before I totally gave up painting. And I don't know how many of you out there remember an old game called Flintloque. It was basically like it was kind of like a fantasy version of Napoleonic Wars, where, like for instance, the British were like orcs, and the Prussians were dwarves, and the Russians were undead, and the French were elves, and I think the Austrians were dogs. It was a really cool game. I sort of really fell in love with it. I suppose it could be classed as my first ever sort of delve into the sort of realms of Napoleonics. Way before I wasn't really what you'd call a historical wargamer. But basically, I came across these guys, and I just had to do a video on them because they're funny as hell. They're the 105th Rifles. And we've got like the 6 characters that you may well recognise. So I'll bring those guys in first. Obviously these were painted many years ago. We're talking I was probably maybe 16 or 17 when I was doing these guys. And of course, if we bring this guy up, I'm sure you can kind of tell who this guy's supposed to be. It's Lieutenant Shark from Sharles Rifles, and I just had to show you these guys because I think they're great. So you can see that I must admit my painting I was quite impressed for way back in those days. Obviously these paints would have been Citadel, which were obviously the mainstay back in the day for when I was kind of into sort of Games Workshop and stuff. This is at the point in my sort of gaming career where I'd kind of was starting to get a little bit fed up of 40k. The prices were sort of eking up to the point where it's very expensive to try and collect a sort of 40k army, and almost impossible to try and collect a Warhammer army unless you were like loaded. And these Flintlock miniatures came along, and they were like a really reasonable price, and I was just hooked. And I seem to remember getting them from an old model shop called BT's that was in Southampton. So I've shown you Shark. Here we have Sergeant Harpex, or Harper, with his volley gun, of course. And you can see that this little plant here is made out of like shavings of balsa wood, because they're basically like I wasn't really up on my sort of modelling terrain back in the day. And for the ground, you can see it's like a really trashy base. It's just like thin is it balsa wood? Yes, balsa wood. I did eventually. They did actually bring out stands eventually, and I think some of my later guys are actually on those. They're basically like sort of pewter stands or metal stands. But yeah, this is like I say, the sort of the equivalent of Harper. I've got to say, I do love these guys. Who have got next? Tongue. Quite a character. His hat hanging off his back there. And then we have the standard Perkins with a handmade little standard there. And then we've got Private Hagman with double G. I'm surprised these guys have actually kept their paint job, because I don't think I varnished my figures back in the day. And something they've only been like, they've been literally sitting inside this it's like a binocular case basically, a little pair of binoculars that my dad got for Christmas like years and years and years and years ago. And they've just basically been sitting in this little box, and I just came across it, and as soon as I saw it, I kind of knew exactly what was in it, and they just brought back loads of like nostalgia basically. Here we have, who we got here? Aris. Really cool. So that's the sort of like Sharles Rifles. And then we've actually got a bunch of like normal rifles here. I suppose you could have perhaps sort of like some sort of semi sort of historical black powder game where some mad scientists decided to create some sort of mutated super soldier, and you basically get like a regiment of these ogre-like 95th riflemen running around the battlefield. So here we have these guys are on the metal stands I was telling you about. I guess they must have made what is that, 950,000. I don't know what that number's on the bottom. Perhaps they made 950,000 stands. But that's obviously the squad sergeant. You can actually, I think these guys are actually, they've got a different helmet insignia to the hats that are on the back of the of Sharles Rifles. So maybe these are supposed to be like a different rifle regiment. But yeah, so that's the sergeant. And we've got a bugler. And you've got a guy loading. I mean, these guys, I seem to remember back in the day when I was painting these guys, I never used to really shade or highlight other than just giving them a wash or something, wash of ink of various colours. But I'm still kind of surprised at how well these guys have lasted, because, like I said, I was 16 or 17, possibly running into 18, when I was doing these guys, and I'm pretty sure, I certainly know Sharks were the first guys that I picked up, because I think I picked up like a starter set, and you got Sharles Rifles and a bunch of elves, which are the French. Another loading duplicate position. This guy. But I seem to remember back in the day, other than like Sharp being on, I can't even remember if Sharp was actually on. I suppose Sharp must have been on TV when I got these guys. I really can't remember. But yeah, so that's those guys, and then finally we've got a couple of officers. So we've got this chap here. And finally, perhaps the colonel of the regiment or something, with his monocle and his umbrella. Very cool. So yeah, that is my refound old Flintloque 105th rifles. And that brings this little bonus video to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. I've got to admit, they certainly brought back the memories, these boys, finding these boys. Obviously these guys are quite a big scale up from your average sort of 28mm black powder figure. If I just bring in one of my rifles from the video I did earlier, you can see these guys are huge in comparison. They must be like perhaps 40 mil, or maybe 35, but they're certainly big. But anyway, they're very cool. I suppose you, if you're doing like a black powder and peel Guardi unit, you could use these guys as ogres. Anyway, bring this video to an end. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed refinding these guys. Like I say, it was a real nostalgia trip going back to these boys, and certainly, like I say, I was really surprised at how well they survived, because they're certainly not varnished or protected in any way. So, until next time, catch you later.